The golden feather. Once upon a time, in a small village nestled at the edge of a dense forest, lived a poor boy named Arlo. He lived in a tiny, weathered cottage with his mother, who worked tirelessly to make ends meet. Though they had little, Arlo was rich in kindness. He always shared what little he had with those who needed it, even if it meant going without. The village itself was struggling. Crops had withered in the fields, the river ran low, and the villagers wore tired faces. But despite the hardships, Arlo always believed there was a way to make things better. One crisp morning, as the sun rose over the horizon, Arlo ventured into the forest to collect firewood. The trees whispered softly in the breeze, and shafts of golden light danced on the forest floor. As he bent to pick up a stick, a brilliant flash of light caught his eye. Perched on a low branch was a feather unlike any he had ever seen. It shimmered like liquid gold, glowing softly in the morning light. Carefully, Arlo reached out and touched it. To his surprise, the feather felt warm in his hand, and a gentle voice seemed to echo in his mind. "This is no ordinary feather. It grants one wish at a time, and its magic will last as long as it is used for good." Arlo's heart raced. He could hardly believe it. "A magical feather?" he whispered. "What should I wish for?" He thought about the many things he could wish for: new clothes, a feast, or even a grand house. But then he remembered the hungry faces of his neighbors and the dry fields that stretched across the village. "I know what to wish for," Arlo said firmly. Holding the feather tightly, Arlo whispered, "I wish for rain to fall and make our crops grow." The feather glowed brightly, and a soft breeze stirred the air. Suddenly, dark clouds gathered above the village, and a gentle rain began to fall. Arlo ran back to the village as the parched earth drank deeply. The villagers stepped outside, their faces lighting up with joy as the rain renewed their fields and hope. "Arlo, what happened?" one villager asked. "I found a golden feather," Arlo explained, showing them the shimmering treasure. "It grants wishes, but only for good." The villagers marveled at the feather's beauty, but Arlo tucked it safely into his pocket. Over the next few days, Arlo thought carefully about how to use the feather. He noticed that the village's mill was broken, making it impossible to grind grain for bread. Without hesitation, he wished for the mill to be repaired. The feather glowed again, and by the next morning, the mill was as good as new. The villagers cheered and thanked Arlo, their spirits lifted by his selflessness. One by one, Arlo used the feather to help his neighbors. He wished for warm blankets for the cold, clean water for the well, and tools for the farmers. Each time, the feather shone brightly, and the magic spread joy and relief throughout the village. But not everyone was pleased. A greedy merchant, who often overcharged the villagers for food and supplies, noticed the changes in the village. He learned about the golden feather and decided he wanted it for himself. One evening, as Arlo walked home from the fields, the merchant approached him. "Boy," he said, smiling slyly, "I've heard of your magical feather. Why not sell it to me? I'll pay you handsomely." Arlo shook his head. "It's not for sale. The feather's magic is meant to help others, not to be used for greed." The merchant's smile vanished. "Then I'll take it," he snarled, lunging for the feather. Arlo stumbled backward, clutching the feather tightly. "The magic won't work for you," he cried. "It only works for those with a kind heart." The merchant hesitated, realizing the boy's words were true. With a huff, he stormed away, leaving Arlo to clutch the feather protectively. That night, Arlo sat by the fire, gazing at the golden feather. He thought about how much it had changed his village, and how much happier everyone was. But a question lingered in his mind. What would happen when the feather was gone? The next morning, Arlo gathered the villagers. "The feather has helped us a lot," he said, holding it up for all to see. "But we must also help each other. The feather won't last forever, but kindness and teamwork can." The villagers nodded, understanding his words. Together, they began planting seeds in the newly fertile fields, fixing homes, and caring for one another. The feather became a symbol of hope and generosity, reminding everyone of the power of selflessness. One day, as Arlo sat under a tree, the feather began to glow brighter than ever before. The same gentle voice from the forest echoed in his mind. "You have used the feather wisely, Arlo. Its magic has brought happiness to many, but now it is time for it to return." Arlo felt a pang of sadness, but also pride. He had used the feather not for riches, but for good. With a final burst of light, the feather floated upward and disappeared into the sky. The villagers gathered around him. "The feather may be gone," Arlo said, "but its magic lives on in us. Together, we can keep making this village a better place." From that day forward, the village flourished, not because of magic, but because of the kindness and hard work of its people. Arlo grew up to be a wise and generous leader, remembered always as the boy who found the golden feather and used it to bring happiness to others.